You are listening or you are watching the Church Answers podcast, our bite-sized nuggets of good information for the local church. It's a relatively new podcast, but it doesn't seem that new because we're on episode number 103. And one of the reasons it doesn't seem that new is because we do 3 a week and we drop 3 a week. My guest is someone that I have known probably since his birth. No, actually, I knew him before he was born. Jess Rainer, the third son of Nellie Jo and Tom Rainer, order of priority given just in that order: Jess, Nellie Jo, Tom, or Nellie Jo, Jess, and Tom, whatever the case may be. And this guy has a brand new book out called Launch a New Church, 10 Questions Every Leader and Member Must Answer. Jess, welcome to the podcast, and I'm going to get maybe one question to you at each of the next 3 episodes. But welcome.
Yeah. I'm excited to be on. We were just talking. I believe this is my first ever podcast with you. We've done other types of webinars and online conferences, but this is my first podcast, so it's good to be on. I'm glad you finally allowed me to be on. You let the other 2 sons be on, but finally let me be on.
Don't take it personally. Just take it professionally.
Okay, my feelings aren't hurt.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we want to thank Belay. Belay's been our great sponsor from the onset of Church Answers podcast, and they're just absolutely incredible. If you need somebody to become a worker for you, that you want Belay to do all the work for you, and then you just get the good worker, and the good worker just does it all. And Belay does all the background work and all the administrative work, whether it be an executive assistant, bookkeeper, or some type of position that is similar to that. And just remember, Belay has been with Church Answers ever since Church Answers has existed. We've been with Belay ever since they had that name. They had another name at some point, but we go way back. They have a download for you called The Power of Productivity. If you want to get that download, it'll be very helpful for you in your ministry, in your life, whatever context you want to use to use that download. Text Tom at 55123. That's THOM at 55123. Jess, first, tell us, because we're going to use this as kind of the introduction to every one of our podcasts. Tell us the 3 contexts in which you have started a church.
3 contexts, all in the Nashville, the greater Nashville area. So all in Middle Tennessee. So geographically,
going south is what you did. You started kind of north, and then you went kind of central. You tell your own story. I don't need to talk for you.
Yeah. So all in the general Nashville, Middle Tennessee area. But started in really each church plant I served in a different chair. My first church plant, I was part of a leadership team, wasn't the lead pastor, but I served in, I would call the 3rd chair. There's a lead pastor, executive pastor, and I was full-time staff on that. In the second church plant, I served in the 2nd chair, so served with a lead pastor as an executive pastor. And then this 3rd church plant, I had the privilege and honor of being the lead pastor. And so have been at my current church for 7-8 years now. So we're moving beyond the church plant name, and so moving out of infancy into more toddler stage and getting some more stability. But we're still a church plant in some ways, but we're growing out of that in a lot of ways as well.
Who's your favorite church member at the Church of Spring Hill?
I don't have to think long at all. My mom.
I thought that would be the answer.
100%.
And we don't need to go any further on that. I just wanted to give you that softball because I knew that would be something you want. We're going to focus this episode on the challenges of starting a new church, a new site, and it's bite-sized nuggets, Jess. So just start talking. What are some of the challenges, and maybe the different contexts yield different kind of challenges. Take it wherever you want to go.
Yeah, I know we're starting off with the challenges, and we're going to get into some other episodes talking about the rewards. And so I want to make sure that we set this up because church planning is quite challenging, but also extremely rewarding. And so if you hear this one, make sure you hear the next one as well, because they really go together. I'm going to start with the biggest challenge for me, especially as a lead pastor, was my calling to church planning. What I've realized is that you have to test your calling to plant a church, because your calling will be tested. Church planning is it's ministry that is unlike any other. And I think you could say that in a lot of different contexts. I get that, established church revitalization, but there's something with church planning that really demands that you as a lead pastor know that you're called without a shadow of doubt, because I'll talk about in a minute just the spiritual warfare that takes place as being a part of church plant. you're gonna find that your calling is tested. And so one of the biggest challenges is personally is leading through all that goes into a church plant. And so I would say at the onset, make sure without a shadow of a doubt you're called. Find other people who can speak into your life, mentors. If it's a sending church, whomever has to validate this calling, and you have to go back to this place, because what I have found over the years is I have to go back to that moment I knew I was called. I have to go back to that moment at my kitchen table, sitting there with my wife, when we were writing pros and cons, when we were playing out, and it became 100% evident God was saying, do this. I've gone back to that kitchen table time and time again, because you're going to be tested. You're going to be testing your leadership. You're going to be testing your calling. But that's a great place to start. That's a big challenge that I could go deep into. But it's one of the biggest that you'll face when you starting a church.
Somewhat tied to that is, from my perspective, I'm not a founding member. Your founding member started in your home. I came pretty quickly. Nellie Jo and I did, after the church began to get on its feet. But I have seen an emphasis upon the church at prayer, not just prayer, but the church at prayer. That ties right into the calling, the spiritual warfare, and all of that. Am I wrong?
Not wrong at all. I believe that the church at Spring Hill, where I'm pastor, would not be in existence if it were not for the prayer warriors that have been a part of the church at Spring Hill. And they've changed over the years. God's called up some prayer warriors. They've, different reasons. Church planting is often a revolving door, but God will raise up new prayer warriors. And that's a major part, because I would say a second challenge, if I'm looking at this from the challenges of church planting, would be that temptation to start playing it safe. And I think very quickly in church planning, you like to go, I've done it before. I like to go into safe mode. And so what prayer does, it keeps you out of that status quo. It keeps you out of that complacency factor, because if you're starting a church, you launch, you get going, year 2, that's when that complacency factor really starts to set in. And prayer is a major component of overcoming the challenge of playing it safe. It's going to happen. It's going to get frustrating at times too, just because I often said that my first 3 years of a church plant, I pastored 3 different churches. It's because there's so many different people come in. It's the nature of church planting. And so you often can fight, and there's a challenge to be tempted to get into complacency mode, to cater to certain people so that they'll stay. But prayer is that major push forward that keeps you out of that challenge. And so, yeah, if there's one thing that you can do early and often, is prayer. Never go wrong with that.
I don't want to take away some of your answers because we have such a little time, but just again, from my perspective, and you just glance it over and do something else if you want to. But from my perspective, church plants attract some people, not all the people, some people that want to see a church formed in their image more than an established church. And if you don't meet those demands, expectations, all of a sudden they become a problem.
I've learned this lesson.
What's that?
I've learned this lesson the hard way. Yes. And really, I think if I'm looking at another challenge, you're talking about the challenges here. It's that vision of the church. I have learned, especially early on, that there's a challenge to create a big, broad vision for a church plant. You may be thinking that's good. That's a good thing. What it actually, I've learned, it's not necessarily good at the beginning of the church plant, because of everyone that is attracted to church planting. Just there's going to be this nature of when you just, hey, there's a new church starting, you're just going to attract people. And so early on, I would say fight the challenge to have a big, broad vision, but have a vision that is long and narrow in scope. It's the idea of, you want something that has longevity to it, but you want it to be very narrow. You want it to be very culture driven. This is who we are. And so, because you're going to have a lot of different people coming in those doors. And even if you have no vision, that's even a bigger problem, because what happens is people start inserting their vision early on into a church plant. And so there's a big challenge there when it comes to vision casting. And I think it's vital to the life of a church plant. And so early on, when you feel that challenge, planting a church, keep it long, but keep it narrow in scope, keep it narrow in focus, and overcome that challenge.
Well, we're out of time. Do you want to give a bullet point of one or two others, or do you feel like we've touched upon the big ones? You wrap this up the way you think is best.
I'll say this. I'll say one final point. Not everyone, if you're starting a church or you're thinking about starting a church, not everyone is going to want a church to be there. The community may not want it. Other churches may not want it, but most importantly, Satan is not going to want it. Mm. And so early on, you're already seeing a theme, how much prayer is important, vision, making sure you're called to it. The spiritual warfare exists, and it exists greatly when it comes to church planning. I've seen it unfold in many, many different ways. Make sure you are staying grounded personally. If you're a church planner or you're part of a church planning team, staying grounded in the word, grounded in prayer, because you're going to face that challenge that Satan wants to shut your doors really, really quickly.
We've been talking with Jess Rainer, his brand new book from Tyndale. It's How to Launch a New Church Site, 10 questions every leader and member must answer. You got to get the book. You just got to get the book. It's absolutely incredible. And again, these bite-sized nuggets can sometimes leave you hungry for more. That's the way I am. But we're going to be talking to Jess in 3 episodes. We do that when we have a guest that particularly has a lot to offer. And Jess is going to be talking more about starting a new site, a new church. This side is going to be the rewards. So once again, thank you, Belay. Thank you for the download. Once again, if you want that ebook, The Power of Productivity, text THOM at 55123. That's THOM at 55123. Remember, we provide 3 episodes at a time, 3 at a time, and you can take them in bite-sized nuggets. You can put it on 1.5 speed, and you can be done in 7 minutes usually. So thank you again for being a part of the Church Answers podcast. Hang on then and get ready for the next episode with Jess called The Rewards of Starting a New Site or New Church. We'll see you then.